Today on the TBN Israel podcast, the war in Gaza is far from over. The IDF is moving into a new type of warfare. Hamas has been recruiting, fighting, and maneuvering against the IDF in a way different than before. The Hamas organization has refused every type of agreement with Israel, even through mediators and other third-party countries that have tried to help. And we're here today breaking down everything that's happening in Gaza and then the wider implications on Hezbollah in other parts of the region. But first, you're here watching the TBN Israel podcast. I'm remotely joined by my colleague Yair Pinto. Hi, Yair.
Hey, Mati. It's great to be here. And guys, if you are with us now, this is the time to click that subscribe button to TBN Israel and help us share the truth with everybody around the world that wants to know what's happening in Israel. What we do and what we have been doing since October 7 is to share the truth of what's happening in Israel and encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And every click on that subscribe button helps us reach more people around the world. So we have a lot to talk about today, from the fact that the terrorist organization Hamas is recruiting an extra 30,000 fighters. The organization is also changing its tactics into a guerrilla warfare style because it doesn't have the time to train all these new recruits. So basically, he's sending them to carry out suicide missions against our forces. And the more qualified terrorists of Hamas are barricading themselves within the populated areas, meaning surrounding themselves with civilians, also potentially with hostages, in order to preserve the quality people that can actually carry out attacks against Israel in a case of a wider escalation of the conflict. And when our forces, the IDF, moves into the city centers of the Gaza Strip to basically take control of the entire Gaza area. So we have a lot to talk about today, Mati. Yeah. I don't know where we want to start, but
let's give some background
it's very
information.
Crucial, as we see, because also the negotiations are stalled as Hamas keeps rejecting the ceasefire proposals by Israel, and the pressure on Hamas is rising, also militarily, but also by Arab countries around this region that are pressuring Hamas to cease the fighting and to accept the deal, or else their leaders will be targeted also outside of the Gaza Strip.
So, yeah, I think things are very complicated. And to really understand this, we have to, one, give people context. And let's remind everyone, we're looking at a terrorist organization that has been on the offensive since October 7th. And again, let's remind everyone, if you forgot, Hamas attacked Israel on the morning of October 7th, 2023. October 7th, 2023, we're talking about 16 months ago. It's been quite a while since, 18 months ago.
18, I think around 18 months ago.
18 months ago.
I remember this morning, it was like, it feels like 2 weeks at the same time and 10 years. I think it was the most crazy 2 years of our lives in Israel.
18 months ago, they attacked Israel. They started with an offensive, and then they've been playing defense for that entire season. And since then, they've depleted most of their rocket stashes. They've lost much of their infrastructure. They've lost all of their chain of command, going all the way down to like new recruits, and they've lost much of their organizational history. And like you said, they've gone back to guerrilla warfare tactics, which really means that it's lowly trained, low skill, low equipment level warfare. And the numbers, I think, talk for themselves. The IDF had a casualty this last week, which was the first casualty in 3 months.
3 months. 3 months, correct. Basically, the first casualty since the ceasefire collapsed, which means that really the level of sophistication and organizational of the military of Hamas has diminished. And what they do in practice is they send out lone wolf attacks, meaning a squad, 1 or 2 terrorists with an RPG into a tunnel that the IDF did not discover yet, and then they wait for the right moment, pop out, and fire an RPG rocket at our troops, hoping to destroy them. And then they're combining that with IEDs, explosive devices, that they planted throughout the ceasefire. During the ceasefire time when they were roaming free in the Gaza Strip, they planted IEDs in strategic locations, meaning on roads that they saw the IDF using in the past, and in places that you cannot move or maneuver around them. And then that, combined with the RPG attack, is what Hamas is using in order to carry out attacks against our troops. They will not win this war like this, but they are inflicting casualties on our forces.
They're not trying to win a war.
And sadly, the tracker was harmed and died from his wounds because of this explosive device. Basically, the forces launched an RPG, the terrorists launched an RPG at the female jeep that carried female observation soldiers, okay? And then another vehicle came to the scene in order to help them, and then the terrorists detonated an explosive device that was waiting for them. So they set up a trap for our troops.
An ambush.
And that's how they operate at this moment.
Look, I think that's where we're going, though. I mean, this is what everyone has been warning us against, even internally within Israel, is you can't indefinitely carry on with a limited conflict. When you're a maneuvering army, and especially an organized army, one, you lose your edge. When you're fighting a war that is not offensive, or becomes just a static war, you start losing your edge. Your forces become bored with the task at hand. And our enemy, even when they're a low-level enemy, as they are right now, to a great degree, you talk about an improvised RPG missile, an improvised bomb, and ill-equipped and ill-trained individuals are still able to inflict harm because the IDF is a big organization moving through an urban area. You're sort of bound to do that. And all of this begs the question, and I think this needs to be addressed. We don't want to be in the Gaza Strip right now. Israel and the US behind it have been pushing hard to get out of the Gaza Strip and reach an agreement with Hamas. And some of the key factors that we're unable to reach with them is we're just never able to get to the point of having any kind of substantial hostage exchange. And I'll explain. What was it, 2 weeks ago, the Egyptians were involved in one of the last of many iterations of an attempt at an agreement. And Hamas agrees to certain things, and then they don't agree to them. The details don't even matter at this point. The point is that they refuse to actually negotiate. They're holding on to right now to 59 Israeli hostages. About half of them are assumed to be alive. We don't know the exact number. And they're holding on to them with a full knowledge that this will draw out the war indefinitely with Israel. The U.S. has put an incredible amount of pressure to try and reach an agreement. Witkoff was involved with it personally. Israel sent, one team after the other to different countries to try and negotiate. And yet we're never able to reach a point with them, because they just honestly refuse to, where we will change phase from limited warfare to some kind of longer-term agreement. That's where we'd like to go. I mean, God knows, I think Israel wants to sort of end the saga of the Gaza Strip for now. We just don't have anyone to negotiate at this point.
Yeah, Matti, and also, okay, so what the IDF is doing now, and this is not just happening in the Gaza Strip, it's also happening in Lebanon and in Syria. The IDF is creating forward positions within the other side, within the Gaza Strip, and within that territory, they're creating a buffer zones, basically a demilitarized zone between the Israeli border, where the Israeli houses of the civilians are, and the Palestinian side, which currently is under control of terrorists, if it's Hamas in the Gaza Strip, Hezbollah in Lebanon, or the El Julani, El Shara, whatever his name is, in Syria, okay? So the purpose of these permanent posts within the other side are to take the hits from the terrorists before the terrorists can reach the Israeli civilians. And that's what we're seeing that is happening currently. The terrorists are engaged against our forces that are mainly, formed of reserve soldiers. And then the conflict line is within the demilitarized zone and not within the civilian population. So basically, at the moment, the IDF is defending the citizens of Israel from these terrorists. But the problem with the Gaza Strip, and this is the situation here that we've seen, is that the IDF only destroyed about 25% of Hamas's underground terror infrastructure. Only 25% after almost 2 years of war. And it's very hard to fight against this kind of, of warfare, because literally everywhere you step in Gaza, there is a little shaft of a terror tunnel. And Mati, these tunnels are combined and are designed very sophisticated. They have a strategic tunnel that is kind of like the main artery of the tunnel. It's very deep, it's very long, it's bigger. It has like rooms to stay for longer time, supplies, communication systems, air ventilation systems. And then from this strategic tunnel, there are many tactical tunnels. And from these tactical tunnels, the terrorists are popping out, firing an RPG, and then sneak right back in, and then collapse the tunnel on itself. So it's very hard to identify them. It's very hard to even find them after an RPG was launched from them, because they collapse and everything is like sand that collapses on top of each other. So fighting this kind of warfare is very tough. This very tunnel that from it, the terrorists emerged and launched a rocket at our forces was discovered in the past by the IDF. And it was planned to be destroyed. But the tactical shaft that was used was not destroyed. So that's how this attack was carried out. I guess that the terrorists knew that this is their last chance of using this tunnel before the IDF destroys it.
Look, I mean, the reality is, I think it doesn't matter how many tunnels you destroy. It's very easy to tunnel in the Gaza Strip. We've talked about this many times before. The soil is soft, the rock is very soft. It's a very, very easy place to tunnel quickly, especially if you're talking about tactical sized tunnels, where all it takes is, just a tiny bit of digging. You can do it with hand tools and stuff like that. I think the main point here really is to focus on the big picture that's happening. On a tactical level, it doesn't matter what you're going to do. We are, as long as we have a presence within the Gaza Strip, and as long as we're mixed in with, a civilian population that still exists there, you're forever going to see here and there clashes between Israeli forces and Hamas terrorists. That's going to continue indefinitely. What we can notice, though, is that there's been a swell in the number and quality of forces that IDF has had in the Gaza Strip. And there's an understanding there. This goes into an understanding of what the IDF is trying to do in the Gaza Strip currently, which is to apply pressure to Hamas to reach the point of releasing hostages. And this takes a little unpacking. There's been many, many negotiations, some under fire, bless you, Yael, some under fire, and some not under fire.
I'll live, yeah.
Some of the negotiations have been done under fire, where the IDF is attacking Hamas, and some have been done during a ceasefire. And we've found that Hamas is far more cooperative when they're being pressed. And I hate to say this because it's very sad for the people of Gaza. They're much more cooperative when their lifeline, which is the aid that they steal from international organizations, is cut off. And I'll explain that line, which is the way Hamas makes money currently, because the Philadelphia corridor is mostly cut off, and the money that they were getting from the Qataris in the past is cut off. The way they make money is they sell goods that they rob from the aid that comes into the Gaza Strip. They sell that to the people of Gaza.
And right now there is no aid.
And right now there's less aid. It's not complete.
Yeah, it's not
there's much less aid, and their warehouses are less full. So what they have less revenue from doing exactly that. That's the only thing that seems to have any effect on Hamas terrorists, which is terrible when you think about it, because the only way to really get them to comply, they don't care about military pressure, they don't care about damage to population, they don't care about civilian casualties. All they care about is them staying in power and the money that they have. So you look at all of that and you say, like, there has to be some more dramatic step that takes place to weaken them and weaken their grip on the population of Gaza.
Yeah, definitely, Martin. You've seen these trucks firsthand from the entry point from Israel into the Gaza Strip. And you said it's like a scene from Mad Max, that you have these trucks that are covered with metals and bullet holes on the trucks, and then the driver is driving into Gaza, and then immediately it's been looted by Hamas terrorists. And we've seen footage of terrorists with an AK-47 riding the aid trucks, protecting it against other looters in the Gaza Strip. It's just unimaginable. And those looters are the Hamas terrorists, basically. So they want to make sure that the civilian population will not get the aid, because their interest is to either sell it to the Palestinian people, that's how they make money, or to make them look like they're starving, and then the international community will pressure Israel to stop the war or send in more aid, which helps Hamas even further. So yeah, so this is it's kind of a 22. But Mati, maybe we can talk and explain the situation with the Morag corridor. Okay, so I think that most of our viewers understand the Philadelphia corridor. That's the border between Gaza and Egypt. That's basically the only border that Israel is not controlling. And from there, for many, many years, Hamas smuggled weapons from Egypt into the Gaza Strip with tunnels, with above ground routes. And now the IDF is in control of that. But there is another corridor, a little bit more to the north, that is called the Morag corridor. Maybe you can share a little bit, because our viewers want to understand what is this corridor, what's its purpose, and what is the IDF trying to achieve by dividing the Gaza Strip into strips of land, basically.
So, yeah, I wish we could show the map. I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah.
And the idea is here.
It's between Khan Yunis and Rafiah.
Yeah,
exactly.
so it's between Khan Yunis and Rafiah, which is in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. But the main point here to understand is...
It's called Philadelphia Corridor number 2.
Yeah, so we want to isolate Hamas. You need to cut off the external weaponry and cash and, and infrastructure that they get in. So we cut off the Philadelphia corridor. And then the second part of that is we want to limit their movements within the Gaza Strip, because what happens is the IDF doesn't fire into civilian population. So we, let's say we want to invade something in the southern part of the Gaza Strip. We tell the population, hey, we're coming in 3 days, move north to so-and-so location. And what happens is the Hamas terrorists, they hide and stash their weapons, and then they put on civilian clothes, which they're usually wearing now, civilian outfits. They wear their uniforms mainly when they're doing the ceremonies during the ceasefire.
They keep them ironed.
Yeah, they keep them ironed in the closet. They come out in civilian clothing, and then they sneak into the area that the civilian population is being evacuated into. And then when the IDF comes in, most of the Hamas fighters are already gone. And that's a problem. The way to isolate is we sort of start blocking out areas within the Gaza Strip so you can operate in a closed geographical, let's call it, box. And when you do that, you control both the movement of weapons and the movement of terrorists, and you're able to isolate an area and really thoroughly clean out the terrorists and the weapons that exist in that area. And the reason IDF is doing that is, again, remember, we're working in this densely populated area, heavily populated area, with millions of civilians that have been displaced multiple times, and embedded within them, hiding behind the women and the children, are the Hamas terrorists. And the only way to really isolate them is to start splicing the Gaza Strip, pushing the population, and then sort of essentially filtering through them to get out the Hamas people.
More than that, they have right now in Rafiah, they didn't destroy Hamas position over there, so now they blocking that from Philadelphia corridor and Khan Yunis, what mean that they barricade, like closed.
Barricade?
Yeah, the Rafiah right now, so it's closed from all sides, and
they can't escape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what Tomer is saying is exactly that. So, if you close off the areas, you deny access to outside forces, and now you've closed in the forces that you're wanting to fight, and you can just sit on them until it's the time where you want to clear through the city. And I think that's important to understand. This also ties into some of the humanitarian issues that have been coming out of the Gaza Strip. Namely, there was an accusation made, let's say a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I did a segment on it with CBN News, where the IDF bombed a hospital. You remember that, Yael?
Yeah.
And the whole story.
Yeah, I remember that.
The whole story wasn't that the IDF was bombing a hospital intentionally. It's because the Hamas had taken over the hospital and hid in huge numbers inside the hospital, one of the last hospitals standing. And then the IDF says to them, and we've seen this before, we've seen the footage of this.
It happened basically in every hospital in the Gaza Strip, Mati. It's like, I'm laughing because history repeats itself. And Hamas understood that we don't want to destroy hospitals, so that's where they place their command centers in the Gaza Strip. And then the international community and the media falls into that again and again. So yeah, continue. Share about this specific incident, because it's important, because I see it also on many media reports that the IDF is attacking ambulances and Red Cross or Red Crescent members in the Gaza Strip, which is not correct, and people need to understand the true story behind this.
So the blood libel is that the IDF executed a bunch of, they're Red Crescent workers, people that are, let's call it the Muslim version of the Red Cross, and aid workers, and then an UNRWA person the next day. it's a long story that goes over essentially multiple hours throughout the night. And the beginning of it is there's an ambush by an elite unit connected to the Golani Brigade, and that unit catches a vehicle full of Hamas terrorists, 6 Hamas terrorists, by the way. That's the first vehicle that comes down the road, and they kill those terrorists. There is no debate over the fact that those are terrorists. And then after that come multiple vehicles that are connected to the Red Crescent. And these people, let's call it aid organizations. And these people are identified, are not identified. It's not entirely clear if the soldiers knew they were aid workers or not. But essentially another 9 people essentially are killed and 1 survives. Then the claim is, and I'll explain the logistics of this, the claim is that the IDF soldiers executed them in close range and then buried the bodies to hide the evidence. Here's the true story. There is, by the way, there was something done wrong there by the IDF. I'll start with that. And we know this because the IDF's already kicked out a battalion XO because of what took place there. The commander on the ground of that event was removed from his role already because he went to a certain degree against orders and also wasn't clear in their interpretation of the firing rules, the open fire rules. But the more important issue is that the IDF investigates every such event. Every such event, and I want to say this at the highest level, the people that investigated this were a team from the Chief of Staff's office, a team led by a high-ranking officer who personally investigated this and reported directly back to the Chief of Staff. This wasn't an assassination, we know that. Not only that, the reason that the bodies were buried is for 2 reasons.
Found you all the information.
It was for 2 reasons. One was to prevent, and I know this sounds terrible, from preventing stray animals from mutilating the bodies, as terrible as this sounds, and 2, so it could be further investigated later on. So with a bulldozer, they cover the vehicles to further be investigated. People interpreted this as, the IDF is executing and then hiding bodies of people. That could not be more far from the truth. I can say this firsthand. This is not hearsay or I heard. I've seen the IDF throughout this war multiple times investigate every small detail that comes out, saying that IDF soldiers were in the wrong. And when soldiers are in the wrong and violate the orders, both of how they use violence and weapons and engage with the population, those soldiers and commanders are removed from their roles. And I've seen multiple such cases happen during the war. And I think this is important to delay on, because you need to understand that the soldiers in the Gaza Strip are operating in an unbelievably complicated situation, where you're looking through, nods, through night vision in the middle of the night. You see a vehicle with the lights on or off, it doesn't matter, coming down the road. And it comes down the road and it has people that you don't identify. They're in a place they're not supposed to be, driving towards a force that is embedded within a building. And that vehicle could be carrying an IED, it could be carrying terrorists, and it could be carrying aid workers. And the soldiers on the ground have a split second, maybe 15, 20 seconds, to make a decision of whether or not these are enemy soldiers. And clearly mistakes were made in that case. But I want to make the point of the IDF, every time a mistake is made, the IDF goes after the people who made the mistake and are very, very clearly punishing those who go against the rules and very thoroughly investigating every such case. And I feel proud to be part of an army like that, where things like that are never hidden. They're not, we don't move on to the next item on the agenda. We thoroughly investigate every time we have the suspicion that innocent civilians were hurt.
So the IDF after that said that one of the guys that the soldier recognized was Muhammad Amin Ibrahim Shabuki. Not mean something, but he was a terrorist that took apart in 7th of October. And they didn't randomly shot this ambulance. They recognized there is known terrorist inside it. So this is from the beginning.
And more than that, Tomer, that's a good point. We've learned again and again since the beginning of this war that Hamas has no boundary, has no respects for any kind of international laws, any kinds of understandings in warfare. Everything is kosher for them, from using their own population as human shields, to using the hostages as human shields, to placing their command centers, their terrorists inside mosques, hospitals, schools, United Nations buildings and facilities and within the humanitarian zones, disguising the terrorists as women, as children. They have no shame and no boundaries whatsoever. And we know that. Our troops know that. So when an IDF team or squad that is stationed in the Gaza Strip sees an ambulance coming to them, they are on high alert in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
They know that in the past, multiple times, Hamas used ambulances in order to transport their terrorists from location to location to carry out, plan, and execute attacks against our forces. This is something that happened before. So this is not like the first time that Hamas used a hospital or a United Nations car to carry out their terrorist activities in the Gaza Strip. So it makes sense that our forces are on high alert. But again, every incident like this is being investigated, and the lessons that are learned are then taught to the soldiers on the field to make sure that next time we learn more and better how to act in every situation.
Yeah.
You know, this is a war. It's not perfect. It's hard. Civilians get hurt. But I think that, you know, with all of these constraints, the IDF is doing actually an amazing job of fighting a warfare within the most densely populated area in the world, in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah, I want to, you know, I think this gets an emotional response with me. I've seen firsthand how many times the IDF has investigated and taken very, very seriously any allegations of wrongdoings by soldiers. And when people make these statements of like the IDF does this and that, I was like, that's not who we are. We are a moral army that, I mean, day in and day out, puts our soldiers' lives in danger to protect civilian population of our enemies. And you're not going to find other armies around the world that go to these lengths to do exactly that. I know people, and we're talking small infractions, nothing like executions. Anytime anything small happens where an IDF soldier is found in the wrong dealing with Palestinian population, that soldier is punished, that soldier is often removed from his unit for good. Officers that, you know, have any kind of like blemish on their record that has to do with wrongdoings or going against regulations with the Palestinian population, those people are removed from their command and kicked out of the army. Our army takes this incredibly seriously, incredibly seriously. I mean, any small crime that you can imagine, the IDF investigates and investigates it fully and thoroughly. And I've seen this firsthand, not just in the past, but also in this war. And I want to make a point of this. You know, people, the headlines unjustly focus on these like, you know, tiny events. And they don't know that before this, you know, mishap with the ambulances in the Gaza Strip, there were 500 convoys that the IDF let go and let them drive by, fearing that there were innocent people in those convoys. And in many of them, there were Hamas terrorists with weapons. And the same happens countless times with the Air Force, etc. Just the other day, there was, you know, there's this whole political discussion happening in Israel, and a story came out about one of the former heads of the Israeli Air Force who refused to bomb a target because there was, listen to this, livestock that didn't belong to the target near the target. And he said, I'm not going to bomb it because it's going to ruin someone's livelihood. He circled his jet, not a helicopter, circled his jet to come back later to give the animals a chance to move away so he wouldn't harm someone's possessions. That's the level that the Israeli army holds itself to. Again, and this is not something I read in a newspaper or you did. We've seen this on the ground, and at this point for over 20 years of military service. And I think it's important to talk about that.
Yeah, Mati, and we just mentioned the fact that we put our soldiers in jeopardy in order to protect the civilians of the other side, the Palestinian civilians. And that takes a toll on the country. So far, we have around, 848, if I'm not mistaken, IDF soldiers that lost their lives since the beginning of this war. 848 soldiers. Just imagine this number. Yeah. This war has been fought around 500 and, I don't know, close to 70 days. So it's more than a soldier per day, an average, since this war started. And that's not the only price that Israel had paid in this war. Imagine the situation on the population of Israel that had to be removed from their houses because they were on war zones. If it's in the north, if it's in the areas surrounding the Gaza Strip, okay? The economy of Israel, we have hundreds of thousands of IDF reserves. These are people that have jobs, had stuff to do, products to create, but now they're in the IDF defending the country.
Yeah.
Who's paying their salaries? It's the country of Israel. It's us, the people of Israel. So the country is suffering. And another major area that is suffering is the tourism industry, because before this war started, we had a lot of tourism coming into Israel, into the Holy Land, to see in the holy sites, to buy the local produce that was made here in Israel. And now all of that is gone. So also the small businesses of Israel are suffering.
Yeah.
Okay, and we get a lot of comments, and people are asking us, how can we support Israel? Okay, so first of all, we always say that the best way to support is to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But also on a practical level, we encourage all of you to come and visit us in person. And when you do, make sure to reach out in the comments or send us, text on social media, and come visit us for the podcast. You can sit with us in the studio with Mati and I. We can have coffee together, and that will be an amazing blessing to the people of Israel if you come as a tourist to tour the land of Israel and see for yourself and stand with Israel during this time, especially now. But if you can't make it, there's another way, Mati. There's a way to help the small businesses of Israel, and at the same time, you can get a piece of this land to your house. And this is one of our partners. The partner is Artzabox. Okay, Artzabox creates these boxes from Israel with goods from small businesses, artisans, from all across the nation of Israel. And by making a subscription, you get a box every few months filled with good stuff into your house in the United States or wherever you are from Israel. So it helps Israel because you generate business for the small businesses in the land of Israel. It helps you because you get a good, nice piece of Israel to your house and you get connected. And it helps us as long as you use the TBN IL code that will give you 10% discount on your Artzabox subscription.
Yeah. Okay,
so let me say the last part again. If you want to make a subscription to Artza, help Israel, help us, and get connected to the land, go to www.artzabox.com, enter the TBNIL coupon code, and that will give you 10% off your subscription, and will make sure that we get the credit for directing you to Artza, and that will help us create more videos like this one in the future. It's actually great boxes. I've seen them, and people love them. So I would recommend you to try for yourself. Anything to add, Mati?
No, I love what they do, and I love their product. It's very, very high quality, and I don't say this lightly. The things that they ship are things that I would be happy to receive. And I say that as someone who lives in this country. I love the attention to detail. I love how beautiful it is. And I love that it's a practical way to reach people in various communities around this country in a time where they need to feel the love and the care of people around the world. Now is that time. And I think it's a beautiful way to touch, connect, and bless the people of Israel. I can't recommend a product more than this.
Okay, Mati, let's give a summary of the situation with the negotiations to release the hostages, and then let's move to the broader implications in the Middle East. How does this affect the negotiations with Iran, with future Abraham Accords 2.0? I mean, everything is connected in this region and in general in the world. So let's start with the hostages. What do we have on the table now? Where are we with the negotiations with Hamas?
Well, we're nowhere with negotiations with Hamas. I mean, you could say
good answer.
No,
you
could say
correct.
You could give a 10-minute answer. This person tried this, and this entity tried that. The bottom line is the same. It doesn't matter who's mediating and who's approaching them and what threats are made. Hamas aren't negotiating the release of hostages, and they've done so consistently for months at this point. There is no ceasefire. They're not trying to reach a ceasefire. They're not trying to release hostages. They're not trying to release Palestinian prisoners from Israeli prisons. What they're trying to do is prolong the suffering of the hostages and Israeli people, and to prolong the suffering of the people of Gaza. And there is no reason to elaborate and say, like, maybe this, maybe that, maybe nothing. They don't want to release the hostages, and they don't want to end the war. That's the reality.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
You know. Okay, so how does this affect the United States? Because they're trying to create this, regional plan, and then there is the war in the Gaza Strip that is always, in the middle of everything, because Saudi Arabia will not move into relations with Israel as long as the Palestinian issue is not resolved. The negotiations with Iran are still stuck, according to Iran, because of Israel. Of course, it's always Israel's fault. And then the Houthis that are launching attacks also because they are supporting the Palestinian cause in the Gaza Strip, which I doubt any Houthi ever met a Palestinian or an Israeli, for that say.
It's complicated. It's really complicated. The only thing I can say is if you look at all of this, I think the only way to bring Hamas to an agreement is to have a regional agreement. They shouldn't be given special attention as, we're only going to focus on this. The Israeli army should, and I think is by American interest, is allowed to pressure them as much as needed. And I feel that is the place we're in. And what they need is they need international outside pressure to reach an agreement. They need Arab countries, such as Egypt, who's a neighbor to them, to say, look, we're not playing with you these games anymore. We will run you dry. We will cut you off from any form of aid whatsoever unless you release the hostages. You're not seeing people doing that. You're seeing these like fuzzy ideas of like, we'll rebuild and we'll bring in an international observer or agency and stuff like that. Look, they're terrorists. They don't care to kill half the population of Gaza trying to bring down the people of Israel. They've made it very, very clear. The way to deal with them is to fight them on an ongoing basis, and then to take away their control of the Gaza Strip, take away their land, bring in an international force, be it Palestinian or otherwise, to just take over the land and say, you no longer control this swath of land. And if you want to lose everything else, just continue with what you're doing. We're moving in that direction.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think similar ideas have been presented. The last phase of negotiation between Hamas, where Egypt was mediating it, this was like 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks. Yeah.
I think two weekends ago. One of the things that was one of the ideas that was presented was that there would be an international Palestinian-led, let's call it coalition or organization, that would come into the Gaza Strip and rule in place of Hamas. And everyone interpreted that as Hamas would just change its name. But I mean, really, that should be the solution. They should be replaced in power. They should be removed. And there should be a fighting force that can fight them out of the Gaza Strip. And I don't see any other alternative.
But only as long as Hamas is demilitarized and gives up its arms. Like this, This is the only solution that this option will work. Yeah. If Gaza will be demilitarized completely, because the population there have been brainwashed for more than 20 years to hate Israel, that the only solution to any problem is armed resistance, to push the Jewish people out of the land of Israel, and to annihilate Israel completely. That's the situation. Hamas is not, fighting to defend the Palestinian people. Hamas is fighting to destroy the Jewish people and Israel. That's their goal.
Absolutely.
And I've been hearing, a lot of comparisons also in rock concerts around the world, that the Irish struggle is the same as the Palestinian struggle. And there's no connection whatsoever, okay? It sounds good maybe on TikTok, and it sounds like something that you want to be supportive of. But if you invest 5 minutes in history, just Google what Hamas stands for, what its charter is, what the Houthis stand for, and everything is basically not related to freedom of anything. It's all about destruction of the other side. In that case, the other side is, first of all, Israel, then it's the United States, then it's the Western values of the world. That's what Hamas is standing for. So it needs to be very clear that this organization should not be allowed to carry any kind of weapon, because they're openly stating that they will use it to destroy the people of Israel and the West in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think we're at about the point where we should start believing what the Hamas and the Hezbollah and the Iranians say. Okay, we should have learned our lesson by now. When they say they want to kill us and everything they care about in life is killing us, let's take their word. They've been men of their word for a very long time, and we should believe them at their word and take actions based on what they say, not what we wish they were saying and wish they were thinking. And they said they want to kill us. Let's fight them till there's no Hamas left. And the Iranians say they want to kill us and they want to bomb us with a nuclear bomb. Let's fight them and push them and pressure them until there is no bomb left. Because otherwise we're going to be back where we were a year and a half ago.
Yeah, exactly. But Mati, let's finish on a happy note, I think. I mean, for me, it looks like history repeats itself again and again, just with a different terror organization, a different enemy. You know, we just had Passover and Easter, and it's always a battle between good and evil. Just the enemy is using different titles, different methods, different slogans. And then on the other side, there is always Israel and the people of God. And the good part about it is that we know how the story will end, with God winning and the people of Israel and the nation of Israel still standing here where we are in Israel. And I think that's encouraging to know that despite everything, we have somebody that is stronger than all these terrorists that we can count on and trust in. Absolutely. And that resonates also on a personal level, because all of us have struggles in life and situations that we don't know how to get out of. But when we're in this situation of uncertainty that we don't have the answers, that's actually a very good place to be in, because then you know that you can only count on God. And I think that's a good, entity to count on in general. So
I feel the same
I would
way.
encourage you guys to pray, right? Mati, what we can do, we can pray. We can pray for the IDF soldiers that are literally risking their lives now inside Gaza, inside Lebanon, inside Syria. Okay, we can pray for the hostages to be released. We can pray for all the civilians in this conflict. We can also pray for the Palestinian civilians. We can pray for the Lebanese civilians, for the Syrian people, and for the Houthis in Yemen and the Yemenite people. I mean, they need prayers. They're suffering by these terrorist organizations. So let's, pray for them also. If you want to, pray for all sides and pray for peace in this region, that's the way to achieve it.
Amen to that. Look, I think you can get despaired and you can lose hope of what happens around the world. But in the end, one, God's been faithful. Two, I'm sitting here in Israel. You're somewhere in North America. But this country behind us, in this amazing view that we get to experience in our studio, this is, the promised land. And our nations return to it in a supernatural way. We speak the language that was lost. We're a people that was lost to history, a religion and a faith movement that was lost. And we're here back in this land. God promised the supernatural revival, both of the nation, the people, and the spirit. And we're en route to see all of them materialize in this land. And I have huge hope. I think we don't know how we're going to get there, and we know it's going to be difficult. But in the end, God's going to be faithful to the people of Israel. As he was in the past, he will be in the future.
Amen. Amen. So guys, thank you for joining us for TBN Israel, the podcast. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, hit this little bell button. And if you're coming to Israel, or when you're coming to Israel, hopefully soon, give us a comment, email us, text us, and come to the studio to visit us, have coffee with us, and watch our podcast live. We really want to see you in real life. It's a different thing than just comments. So thank you so much for joining us this week. Thanks, Mati.
Stay safe. Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.